Guys, there has been a sudden surge in conversations about how often you delete text messages. This has become some kind of conversation piece out there. I don't know why this is anyone's business, but of course we know. 52 of those coming in from Connor Stallions, and Sharon Moore thought it necessary. Now, just this is my own personal preference or maybe my lack of organization, but hey, if people leave my kind of grid of friendship or business contact, they just get lost in the phone. I could probably look up somebody from 18 years ago on my phone and they're still there because I don't just get rid of them. They're there. But some people are a little bit more regimented about deleting people off of their phone. Sharon Moore happens to be in that category, and he does it immediately, just for the sake of organizational purposes, I guess.
Or, get out ahead of the posse, take your pick. We've talked about this issue forever on this show, and I'm sure we will until the NCAA resolves it. But, they really don't have a leg to stand on. And, their behavior is consistent with somebody who knew and knows that what they were doing was not proper. And if, the ESPN report is to be believed, they sent somebody to what, 50, 52, 58 different college football games to scout in person and under their auspices and somehow had the travel, reimbursed one way or the other through the quote Michigan slush fund or however it was done. And, we're supposed to believe that this guy was acting alone and they acquiesced to all of his information. And, it astounds me. I say this every time this comes up. These guys were college coaches for years. Nobody that they've ever come in contact with before or since has ever had a hit rate of 80-90% correct calls on this stuff. And yet they think that it all came together because he watched, the first series of the game and could immediately decipher from standing there in the stadium, oh, this is going to be a run. Oh, this is going to be a pass. No, he was already telling you what was coming on the first play of the game that, he already knew. How did he know? I don't know. How do you think he knew? I don't know. So whatever. People, they're going to get what they deserve. And it's going to be, when the day comes, it's going to be something to see. And, Ohio State's lived through this and, Michigan's going to live through it too. So, that day's coming.
I will say regarding the text messages, regarding the draft of the NOA is the only infraction there was not giving them forward, was trying to hide them initially. And then nothing seems to have come from them getting the text. So I think that's good for Sharon Moore, and that they did get those texts eventually, and nothing came from them as far as we know. Now that may be changing. Maybe that gets added to the draft. I don't know. But as it's relayed right now, the text messages are fine. It's just the trying to hide it. And it's interesting that was like one of the first pieces of that article. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that's very interesting, and we went for like an hour and a half yesterday live talking about it. But perhaps you've got 7 different people getting level 1 or whatever allegations, but 4 of your 10 assistant coaches, your head coach, and other people that are implicated in this in some way and in other ways as well. My thing when talking to Michigan fans about this, I think you should provide, and we can do it right now in the chat, just provide a Turing test with them. Just answer this question, yes or no. Was there cheating inside the Michigan football program? And if they say no, then these are not people that are interested in having an honest conversation. If they say yes, then we can go on and continue to discuss the impact of that, why, where, who knew, that sort of thing. But if you're saying no, there was no cheating in there, then you're a dishonest actor in this point, and there's no reason to further have a conversation with you, because none of the conversation is going to go anywhere if you won't first admit that there is wrongdoing in there. And then we could talk about, well, what's going to happen, and anything could happen, and anything meaning a whole bunch of slaps on the wrist. And but the other thing in there is the repeated aspect of this for the program, and the program being named in one of this. Like the school itself is facing a level 1 violation charge because of its pattern of non-compliance within the football program. And this is something that some people are latching onto, like, hey, Michigan's only being looked at for not being forthcoming with the investigation. There's nothing in this that is about Stallions. It's just the way they reacted to that. But non-compliance means non-compliance with the rules on hand. And that could be not cheating, not doing things that are not allowed, and then also not being forthcoming. So non-compliance is breaking NCAA rules. So that is, I'm going to assume, part of the greater whole deal of this, and that involves Connor Stallions and everything else that has been part of this cheating, sign stealing scandal. So I think the school being named in there, the fact that they're already on probation, like, these are serious things. And I will also say that Michigan has, last year, they would, through back channels to Michigan media, would say, hey, we're going to fight this, we're going to fight that, we're going to get a temporary restraining order on this. Every time they were faced with actually having to follow through on their legal threats, they backed down. And I see people saying that they're going to fight any kind of postseason ban or any kind of punishment that they don't feel is just. And they're not going to feel like any punishment that hurts is just, because I'm guessing a lot of people don't feel like they did anything wrong and everybody else does it. But the idea that Michigan will fight this outside of the normal confines of the NCAA or the Big Ten is laughable to me, because they've backed down every single time they've been afforded an opportunity to go legal with this. They have backed down. And the fact that Jim Harbaugh is not going to be involved in any kind of NCAA conversation. He's already been advised by his attorney, like, this isn't going to happen. His attorney, Tom Mars, basically told the NCAA, don't even bother talking to us. It's not going to happen. So now you've also got a head coach that is kind of just former head coach. Like, I'm not dealing with this, where, kind of perhaps, and we'll see if he's leaving, just hanging his old school out to dry on this one.
Yeah, we could be in a situation in which Sharon Moore gets suspended, let's say 3 games. That seems to be the NCAA standard for this and the previous violation. And to have the head coach suspended for 3 games, or for 9 games over the span of 2 seasons, but that to have been determined that we're not going to change or alter, vacate any games for a scandal that was related to on-field cheating doesn't seem to be necessarily consistent.
No, and it doesn't. And common sense would say if you're cheating to win games, then those games should be taken away. But I'm not going to try to predict what the NCAA is going to do. Clearly, they're not happy with the situation. They've had to lick some wounds over all of this NIL stuff. So I don't know if this is going to be an opportunity for them to maybe get their pound of flesh from somebody finally. But also, I don't see this as being something that is a like revenge oriented. It's the NCAA gets pretty angry when they're trying to investigate you and you're stonewalling them and or not cooperating. And nobody, the school may be cooperating right now because they've been compelled to, but so many of the people of interest are not. And those are all, when you can't talk to the people who know where the bodies are buried, you're not, good luck finding the bodies, basically.
In trying to determine the impact of this, I find it curious that from even going back to day one, when even to the NFL level, players and coaches were asked about how much this would impact a game, the responses ran the spectrum. There was not a consensus, and you would think that there would be a fairly strong consensus that coaches would deduct this is what was going on, this is how much it would impact our preparation or our ability to stop the other team. But that evaluation was all over the place.
Well, I would just say for any of those coaches that say, it's no big deal, why did they have signs? Why did they have signals? Why did they try to keep information from the opponent when they're playing their own games? Why not just yell the play out so that everybody hears it, put it up on the scoreboard so that everybody can see it? Why are you protecting yourself against an opponent if you don't think there would be an impact in having at least a knowledge of run or pass? That very thing alone is a huge advantage. And so for coaches to be like, for coaches or players, and there were some who said it's it's a gigantic advantage there. As you said, there's some who say, you still got to make the play. The whole "you still got to make the play" it is silly to me, because you're just bypassing the fact that the other team has an idea of what's coming. Like that is the whole point. Yes, you still have to make the play. So what? This is still a thing that has been an advantage that has been gained. And so I guarantee anybody that is saying, you still got to make play, or it's no big deal, would not want to be on the other side of this. They would not want to, if they're still playing, have a defensive end, they would love to know whether this is run or pass. An offensive lineman would love to know whether, is this a zone blitz? Who's coming from where? Like all of these things, these people would love to know. And then for anybody to poo-poo it is, again, that's dishonesty.
Mike has the $64 million question. Thank you for the contribution, Mike. If you were in charge of the investigation, what would you choose as an appropriate punishment based upon what we know?
I was muted. Okay, how about this? I don't know what is known about 2022. I assume that they were doing it in 2022, but I think you could vacate every game that they sent somebody to scout a team in person should be vacated. Okay, up through the week of the Michigan State game last year, where Michigan State got that missive from the Big Ten. Hey, you might want to be aware of this, that they've probably got all your stuff. You might want to be aware of this. Of course, here's Michigan State, a double A JV team trying to play them, and that was not going to work. Obviously, it didn't matter if they had Michigan signals; it wouldn't have mattered. They were going to lose that game. So, but maybe have them vacate everything from 22 and 23 where they scouted the opponent. Now, Connecticut or whoever they played early in the season, if there's no evidence they ever went and saw them in person, maybe let those wins stand. But anywhere where they went and saw an opponent prior to playing that team, and the opponent had no inclination that their signals had been stolen, those games should all be vacated, in my opinion. Now, that leaves everything after Michigan State and after. And I put a tweet out. I said, they beat Ohio State, and Ohio State had to come up with an alternate way to do it. Iowa, they beat them. They had to come up with an alternate way to do it. Alabama, they had to come up with an alternate way to do it. And Washington, they had to come up with an alternate way to do it. So those 4 games were probably on the up and up for the most part, 90% on the up and up. And you just have to kind of tip your cap and say, okay, they had the better team. Maybe let those games stand, I guess. It's kind of like Ohio State basketball back. They had, 25 years ago, they had a problem with a player who'd received some extra benefits. And there were seasons where he played in some games and he didn't play in some others. And they selectively vacated only the games that he played in. So, so they're left with like a record of 3-1 one season when he didn't play in 4 of those games. I think the same premise could apply here, that from Michigan State last year on, they didn't really have the full benefit of the scouting because the opponent had the ability to end around that and huddle up and messenger plays in the old way, or whatever newfangled way they came up to do it. Everybody went into the stadium on those days knowing you've got to change how you did business, because if you don't, they're going to pick you apart because they haven't lost. See, no one's beaten them. So, the only team that did beat them was TCU, who they didn't probably get to pre-scout. So that'd be my recipe on it. Vacate every game where they sent somebody to see a team in person before they played them, up until that Michigan State game last year.
And I've said this before, Michigan 2023 national champions, regular season record 5-7.
Yeah.
I mean, what you do with the cheap chip is your own business. The NCAA gives out the cheap chip in men's basketball. So for Louisville, that got yanked back. For this, it's the college football playoff. Bill Hancock, may he not rest in peace just yet. He's not there anymore, but they hired this military guy, to take it over, and kind of
That's
like
what started this mess, hiring a military guy.
hiring a military guy. Then Petiti, he knows all about coming in midstream and having to deal with some stuff. So maybe they'll have an opinion on it. Of course, Warday is now like the head guy on the selection committee. So what do you do about that?
Well, and I also think in terms of, I know people Ohio State fans want to see the CFP take away the title or whatever if this all goes to hell. If you do that, if the CFP does that, then they are associated with, they've got this stain on them as well. And it would almost be better for them, easier for them to just be like, if we just ignore it, we don't have the same stain on us. Michigan has not stained us because we're not acknowledging it. If you acknowledge it, then you look and it's like, what's the history of, who are the history of the winners of the college football playoffs? And it's like, why does Michigan have, or why does this say no winner in 2023? And it's like, well, now you got to tell you why all of this, and this is why the CFP isn't as pristine as we'd like. Whereas if you just leave it be, eventually people forget about it, and the attention span of us is very, very short. And you're already seeing people tired of talking about this, and it's like, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. You can be tired as heck about it, but it still happened, and it's still a thing that is going to have to eventually be resolved. But Steve, as far as vacating the games only to that point, I have to remind you that on his way in this report on Connor Stalions' way out the door, he handed a play sheet to an intern of a future opponent. So anybody want to venture a guess of who that future opponent might be and why it would be very important for Connor Stalions to allegedly hand that over and make sure that it gets into the right hands? I mean,
the one game they had to win.
I mean,
yeah,
that's some easy math. I mean, that's, but what would an appropriate punishment? Let me see all the information first.
Yeah.
And just for the chat, to clarify what Tony and Steve were talking about, obviously there was that intel that was needed to shut out Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. That's certainly what was required there. Yeah, I'm with you, Tony. I want to know, again, even though it seems completely ridiculous, that as Steve more amusingly displayed and interjected in terms of how this information was relayed. And of course, defensive coordinator, whether it was Mike McDonald, Jess Minter, or whoever at the time, was just like, there's the Wonder Boy. So we've got our defensive call, but if it needs to change, just look at him. He'll let you know. We don't know where he got it, where it came from.
It looks like
a mastermind.
One of the games where this guy, the new coach, Moore, is like the interim or the acting coach, maybe the Penn State game, which was like a tremendous breakthrough for them. looks like the first person he celebrates with at the gun is Connor Stallions. Like, I mean, or maybe I've got the games confused. I don't know, but it looks like they have one of the stations that put a video up of him. It seems like he and Stallions are like hugging one another as soon as the game ended. So go with that wherever you want. I mean, I ordinarily turn around and, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm hugging the guy who is Mark Pantoni's right-hand man in the recruiting office. As soon as the final gun sounds, I am finding that guy and I am hugging him because, forget Mark Pantoni. This guy helped us get all these great players, and that's the guy I'm seeking out.
Is there
the underling in the recruiting office?
What is the rational Michigan fans' rationale to Stallions being next to Minter and Moore?
Everybody does it.
Show me.
We would have won anyway.
We would have won anyway. We had the better players.
That's fine. You may have, but you still committed this infraction. So
they took the games out of the hands of the talent. I mean, that's what they did.
They've screwed the players on this because they will have that. They will have to carry on the tainted nature of their basically those 3 years of the Connor Stallions era at Michigan. So that's unfortunate for them.
I understand these football programs are not looking to hire choir boys, but to look at Connor Stallion's resume on LinkedIn and other sources that was being circulated right after this scandal broke, it's like, who did they really think that they were bringing on staff here? He just seemed like an unsavory character from the beginning.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I think he knew somebody who knew somebody, and that's kind of how these things are done. I can't speak to what they thought they were getting with him. Yeah, it is kind of weird. I'll say that, but that they mortgaged everything to go with this guy's information, and then lo and behold, this guy's like a savant, and it went on for 18 months or however long it went on. I mean, it'd still be going on today if they hadn't been, outed by somebody. So
it's still funny to me. Like the Big Ten had to warn the rest of the conference, like, hey, you might want to be aware there's this thing going on at Michigan. Like that itself is unprecedented. And how many times can you
just so you know?
Yeah, right. By the way, and the thing is, if Michigan State, I think if I remember the reporting correctly, if they didn't feel comfortable playing, they wouldn't have had to play that game. And it's like, that's out. That's, generally that's reserved for a pandemic, basically. Like, hey, if you don't want to play, you don't have to. That's the kind of situation that we're talking about there, and unprecedented. And, to think that like Jim Harbaugh got suspended for that, but that wasn't his first suspension for an NCAA violation. Really, this last suspension for him wasn't technically NCAA violation. It was the Big Ten code of conduct, sportsmanship type of violation. So, like, he's violating on several fronts, and to think that now Sharon Moore could be suspended again, which would be his second suspension for a completely separate violation, and you're going to tell me like lack of institutional control isn't a thing, or failure to monitor isn't a thing. Like the amount of stonewalling from people in the program for these things is it's this culture of not following through on NCAA rules that Michigan fans used to have respect for. I don't know what's happened. It's a shame.
I continue to go back to one obvious premise in all this, or in any such situation, there's only one reason to cheat. So I can't get anyone to give me an explanation otherwise of why anyone cheats when they know that they're going to win anyway.